Welcome back. In this video, we're going to do section 2.6, which is on solving a formula for a variable. The first part of it, we need to look at the distance, rate, and time formula. So the formula for distance, rate, and time reads distance equals rate times time. And this governs a situation where there's no speeding up or slowing down, okay? There's no acceleration or deceleration. And what it says is basically that the distance traveled is equal to the rate, that is how fast you're going, times the time you spend going at that speed. So for example, if you were to drive 2 hours at 60 miles per hour, okay, thinking that through a little bit, if it's 2 hours and 60 miles per hour or every hour, then the distance traveled is 60 times 2 or 120, and that would be 120 miles. Okay, in here you do need to make sure that the time units are matching. If you were to drive 60 miles per hour for 15 minutes, okay, then in order to make this work out, we can't multiply 60 by 15, okay? We would need to think of 15 minutes as 1/4 hour in order to answer this question. That would take you 15 miles, right? So there is that. So as another example, let's say that you needed to make an 800-mile road trip. That's the distance. And you need to get there in 5 days for a family reunion or something. So you have to get there in 5 days. How fast should you go each day, or how many miles should you log each day in order to get there in the 5 days? Well, the distance traveled is 800 miles, and the rate is unknown this time, and the time is going to be 5 days. So this is a little equation for us to solve. 800 is equal to 5r. Dividing through by 5 will give us 160 for r. You should travel 160 miles per day. Okay, so let's see a couple of other examples of the distance, rate, and time formula. Okay, here it says Tom drove 5.5 hours at 60 miles per hour. We'd like to know how far did she drive? We'll stick with it. So the distance is equal to rate times time. The distance here we don't know. Rate is 60 miles per hour, and the time is 5.5 hours. So then we need 60 times 5.5. Let me go ahead and work that out. And so that looks like 330 miles. Okay. Anna has to get to the next town, which is 168 miles away in 3 hours. How fast does she need to travel? So again, distance equals rate times time. The distance here is 168 miles. The rate is unknown, and then the time is the 3 hours. So to solve this for r, we're going to divide the 168 by 3. So 168 divided by 3 looks like at least 56 miles per hour in order to get there on time. All right, so this formula is involving distance, rate, and time is an example, of course, of a formula. This one has 3 variables in it. The equations we've been working with so far typically have had only one variable. What a formula is typically an equation that has more than one variable in it and often has some sort of a so-called real-life interpretation like this one involving distance, rate, and time. Okay. So the title of this section is on solving a formula for a variable. So what that means is to rewrite an equation so that whatever the given variable is isolated or solved for or all by itself on one side of the equal sign. And so that's what this section is about. Fortunately, a lot of the steps that we take to do this are really similar to the steps that we take or have taken in the past to just solve equations. So let's try it a little bit. Here it says solve distance equals rate times time for r, and then there's 2 parts to this. When d is 180 and t is 4, and then we'll do it in general. So first of all, when d is 180 and t is 4, so 180 is r times 4, So then R will be 180 times divided by 4, sorry. And so that's going to be 45. And so our answer there is a number, and it's 45, and we're all done. A difference between solving this for R in general is when we're solving this in general for R, still we'll divide both sides by T, we're going to end up with another formula, not a number for an answer. Here, our answer is a formula. This time, R is all by itself, and it's equal to D divided by T. Make sure you pay attention to the difference between part A and part B in this question. Part A, we were given specific values of D and T, and we solved for R, which turned out to be a number. In part B, we're rewriting the equation so that a different variable is all by itself or solved for. Okay. This next one has to do with the area of a triangle. The area of a triangle is 1/2 the product of its base and height. We can solve this for H when A is 170 and B is 17. So let's do that. So then which step to take first? I was going to multiply both sides by 2 first, but then that's going to make the numbers larger, and so I'd rather not do that. So let me first divide both sides by the 17, just that way that keeps the numbers smaller at first. 170 divided by 17 will be 10. That is 1/2 H. Now we'll multiply both sides by 2 to get our H as 20. Okay, so there's that. We solve for a particular value of H. If we want to do this in general, if A is 1/2 BH, we could multiply both sides by 2 to clear the fraction out. And then since we want H all alone, and right now it's multiplied by B, we'll divide both sides by B so that we'll have H equals 2A over B. Okay, so once again, we've got another formula. This time H is all by itself, and we didn't get a number for an answer. Okay, the next formula involves simple interest, or the calculation of simple interest. The formula, I, which is equal to P times R times T, is used to find the amount of interest that is either paid or received, depending on your position, on an amount called the principal at an interest rate of R and for a time of T. So there's two different ways, basically two different ways of calculating interest: simple interest and compound interest. Compound interest is dealt with at another time. Right now, simple interest is calculated using this formula. Principal is the amount of money either borrowed or lent. And notice, by the way, that this is P-A-L word principal, not P-L-E. So be careful of your spelling. And that's the amount of money borrowed or lent. R, the interest rate, will always turn that into a decimal, and T is in time. Okay, so here, let's calculate for this one. It says, suppose that I is $2,160, the rate is 6%, and T is 3 years. We're going to find P, the amount of principal. So for this one, it was 2,160. That's the principal, which we don't know. The rate is 6%, making that a decimal. That's 0.06. And then the time was 3 years. Okay, so then let's work on solving for P. 0.06 times 3 is 0.18. And then 2,160 divided by 0.18 will give us our P. Okay, so let me use calculator, save us a little time. That's 12,000, looks like. Yeah, 12,000 for P. Okay, so $12,000 would have been the amount originally invested here. Okay, next, let's solve for P in general. So our formula here is I equals P times R times T. We would like the P all by itself. Right now it's multiplied by R and T. So we're going to divide both sides by R and T. So we'll have I divided by RT equals P. Okay, once again, that's our formula. Not a number for an answer, but instead a whole nother formula. Okay, so that is the bulk of this section, really. The next part has to do with primarily doing a bunch of examples. So let's see a lot of examples. So for this one, we've got 3x plus 4y equals 10. And we're going to first solve that for x, then we'll solve it for y. Let's first solve it for x. Notice when you're solving an equation for a variable, you need to be told which variable you're solving for. So we have 3x plus 4y equals 10. When it was an equation like before, like 7x plus 1 equals 16, and if I just ask you to solve that, it's easy. There's only one variable, so you know you're solving for x. Today, we're solving for a variable, so you have to know, am I trying to solve for the x, am I trying to solve for the y, or whatever. So we have to say solve for whichever variable it is. Okay, so we're trying to solve for x. That means that I want the x all alone, so I need to get that 4y out of here. We'll subtract it from both sides. And then finally divide by 3 to get x alone. So x will be negative 4y plus 10 over 3. Okay, next we're going to take and solve the same equation, but this time for y. We want y all alone instead. Okay, so now we're going to, if we want y alone, that means the 3x should be out of here. So we're going to subtract the 3x from both sides. And then we'll divide by 4. So y will be 10 minus 3x over 4. Okay, and that'll do it. All right, so notice, by the way, there's different equivalent expressions for these. So if you did the terms like in a little different order, you could have ended up with a different looking but equivalent answer. For example, you might have had 10 minus 4y over 3 in the first case, or you might have had negative 3x plus 10 over 4 in the second case. Of course, they're equivalent to each other. All right, next, this formula has 4 variables in it. P is equal to A plus B plus C. We want to solve this for C. So if P is A plus B plus C, I need to subtract the A and the B from both sides. Okay, so P minus A minus B is equal to C. By the way, remember, if you're using some kind of online homework for this, and this question is like in an online homework, you might see, for example, the C next to and the equal sign outside the answer box. And so you would need to only type in the P minus A minus B. If you were to type in the entire thing, then it might get marked wrong on you. So you want to be careful of that and make sure and read what's outside if you of the answer box if you're doing some sort of online homework. Okay. All right, so a couple of more. For the next one, we want to solve 4x plus 7y equals 9. We're going to solve that for x. Why don't you take a minute and pause the video and try this one on your own, then restart the video and see how you did. Okay, so here we've got our equation. We would like to get x all alone, but I can see that there's this 7y term that needs to be removed. So we're going to subtract 7y from both sides. And then we'll divide by 4. So x will be 9 minus 7y over 4. The next formula has to do with the perimeter of a rectangle. That's the distance around a rectangle. If you know its length and width, you can find the total distance around. For now, though, we just want to solve this for w. If P equals 2L plus 2W, and we would like the W alone, then that means that that 2L term needs to be dealt with. We'll subtract 2L from both sides. Next, we're going to divide by 2 so that W will equal P minus 2L all over 2. Okay. The next one is a formula involving a circle. a circle's circumference, which is kind of like its perimeter, really. One moment. All right, sorry about that. So here, if you have a circle with radius r, this formula tells you its circumference. And pi here, if you've never seen it before, is a constant value, and it is approximately 3.14159. It's an irrational number, making it a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal. And then this, if you've never seen it, this letter that looks a little like a T with two legs is a Greek letter P, called pi. But for now, all we need to do is to take this formula, C equals 2 pi r, and solve it for r. Right now, the r has been multiplied by 2 pi, so we're going to divide both sides by 2 pi. So then r will equal c divided by 2. And that's how we solve our formula for a variable. Okay, we are almost done. In this example, this formula, C, which is equal to 5/9 F minus 32, is a formula that you would use to convert a Fahrenheit temperature into Celsius. Sorry, I have that. Yeah, that's right. We want to rewrite that so that we get a formula solved for F that will turn Celsius into Fahrenheit. So we'll start with our formula C equals 5/9 F minus 32. All right, so this time we would like F all by itself. So what we'll do is, typically what we do is we distribute to remove parentheses, but I think it will be a little neater on this one if we deal with that 5/9 first. So I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 5/9, which is 9/5. Okay. The thinking there is that 5/9 and 9/5 are reciprocals of each other, and so that will just equal 1. So after doing that, our right side will just be F minus 32, where our left side will be 9/5 C. Now, to get F alone, we will add 32 to both sides, getting 9/5 C plus 32 for our F. I like to rewrite those so the variable we were after is on the left, but that's not totally necessary. But anyways, we're done with solving a formula for a variable. So to kind of review, we talked about the distance equals rate times time formula, along with a couple of examples. We talked about how solving a formula for a variable means to rewrite it so that a different variable is all by itself. Typically, a formula has more than one variable in it, and so we have our choice over which variable can be isolated or by itself. And fortunately, the procedure for solving for a variable does apply some of the skills we've already practiced, like distributing to remove parentheses or combining like terms, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing on both sides. So all those skills we already practiced can apply here. Anyways, that takes us to the end of this section. Let me know if you have any questions, and have a great day.